Hello and welcome to Starcodes Astrocast, a view of the month ahead. This day, it's May of 2026. Earlier today, I had a wonderful conversation with Moons about death charts and death charts in the chart. Check that out on my YouTube channel and earlier on my Facebook channel. But today we're going to talk tonight about the astrology of this month and how you can best negotiate it. Here's the chart of today, which is really an interesting one. We have the sun now in Taurus, moon in Libra, sounds nice and romantic, but we still have this lineup of Aries planets that's ready to light a fire on any powder keg. So Neptune, we have Pallas Athena entered Aries, the need to speak the truth, particularly form of feminine intelligence, but it can be where we tend to go to our head instead of our heart. But it asks us to be focused and to speak the truth and stand up for the truth for the next months. That's joining Neptune, which for the next 13 years brings our value to the spirituality of Aries, which can both idealize war, as we have seen. The war started in the Mideast the day Neptune went into Aries, and it started as Neptune last went into Aries during the American Civil War. But it's also the value of speaking up, of being heroic for good causes, for taking on challenges and dealing with natural disasters, really taking on what matters rather than sitting back and being passive about it. Now, how we do that wisely is the point we don't necessarily agree upon. Saturn has moved a little bit farther. It's now at 9 Aries this summer. All these planets are going to come back to around 4 degrees. But right now, Saturn's moving on to 9 Aries, and we'll talk about some of the aspects that'll be making. But that Saturn, Mars is in its own sign of Aries. So that Mars is always what gives us energy. It's the motivator. It's what gives us juice. And right now, that's the desire to be independent, to do it on our own terms, and to boldly go where we have not gone before. That is Mars and Aries. Now, Mars and Aries doesn't necessarily have to have a fight. But if you try to tell anybody what to do right now, or you kind of curtail their ability to move in the world, you watch the fight start. But it's also the need to bravely move forward and to try something we haven't tried before. What do you want to do? What do you want to take that bravery and take to your own life? It's a chance to start over. It gives us energy, but it can come in more fists and bursts than steady. Mars is heading into Taurus later on this month, which will help steady our energy. But right now, throw yourself into those big projects. Just take your time. The trick, though, with Aries is, because it's often seen as ready, fire, aim. How do you take that time to slow down, to notice what you're actually doing, and then move forward, to not move faster? Somebody said, move faster than your angels can fly. I think of that military phrase, ready, fire, aim. Make sure that you aim before you fire. Make sure that you look where you're going, that exercise in being in our own place and moving with consciousness and making all of life a mindful exercise rather than thinking about what you're going to do 10 steps down the way and missing what you're doing. Just keep that little bit. Mercury is an Aries, so people tend to speak from the hip, spout off, and don't always think through the consequences. Everybody gets a little hot under the collar with these planets lined up in Aries. Now, we also have Venus conjunct Uranus in Gemini, a very juicy kind of flirtatious time, good for meeting strangers, good for finishing up a school year, making new contacts, both, and reaching out to some new connections, both for work, romance, friendship. But our attention span is not very strong with any of this. Our attention span is intense focus as long as we keep moving. So it's better to kind of put our energy into one place, put our energy into one conversation, and then come back around to it. Go do it. What else we need to do? Have several pots cooking. rather than try to just stay focused and be mad at yourself when you can't sit still for long. Work with this energy. But that combination can be, it's not necessarily flirtatious in that you need to touch everybody, but you may need to talk to everybody. And so give people room to be that way. Venus is just pulling away from this trine to Pluto, helping us remember what we care about, what we love in the face of life and death, what's important to us. Now, on this weekend, we're going to see a May Day, first day of May. Lovely. We all think of that as kind of reaching out and bringing in the May, and bringing in the May after to remind us that flowers do come no matter how long and hard the winter was. But here with the on the first day of May, it's going to be a full moon in Scorpio, and that is moody and intense. It'll be exact here in the western areas in the mountains at 11:22 a.m., but you can adjust for your time zone. One of the things about it's very good for spring cleaning, for letting go, for releasing what we need to release, particularly emotional stuff. But watch every emotion that can come up. Every strong feeling, if it can be, I'm kind of keeping an eye on this, on the big picture, because sometimes it brings up acts of revenge that are not useful, but are intense. But even more than that, one version of when Buddha was born was on the full moon in Taurus. And there are several variations. We know that he was born on a full moon, but we don't know which one. This one is the one that seems to make sense to me from all the stories I've read. And that full moon in Taurus, that moving beyond, that realizing that the root of suffering can be desiring something that is not here. One great definition I heard from a Buddhist teacher was, it wasn't that that desire is the cause of all suffering. Suffering was a mistranslation. It was he said the real word is about how wobbly a wheel gets when the axle isn't right in the center of the wheel, that the wobble gets worse and worse, and that uncenteredness causes a problem, which creates a bigger problem. So desire can uncenter us, and that can cause suffering. And this is that full moon that full moon is very strong in helping us look at our desires, look at what we love, what we hate, and how do we come back into our heart and use that, with awareness, and use that for focus, to let go of what we need to let go of, and to focus what we're doing next with this energy. But watch how that feels. Watch any strong moods that come up. You might check in on people who have are facing really hard times at the moment, because that Aries can make us so impatient. It's good on a day when we're walking through the woods, but if we're really impatient and feel like we are blocked from what we really want, Aries can lower our impulse control, and people can do drastic things. So just check in on the people that you know and love who are facing a hard time, and just help them have that little bit more patience to see it through and to keep them solution focused. What one small thing can they do to make their world better, or the world better, and take it from there one step at a time. Now, this is also intense because coming up with this is building into a square. So, over the weekend, we'll see that Mars in Scorpio. Then, and May 2nd, that deep feeling that moves towards a lightness by midnight as the moon heads into Sagittarius and forms, lovely. It starts trining all those Aries planets, which can be quite fun on Sunday and even into Monday. But on Monday and heading into Monday, we see Mars at 19 Aries squaring Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's bigger than all the other planets put together, and it expands whatever it touches. And it's going to be squaring that Mars. Now, it can give us the opportunity, if we use it well, because we always have choice. Remember, I am a choice-based astrologer. My book is based on that, how to take each aspect, each planet, each place, and find the positive expression as the cure for the challenging expression of every sign in place. So that Mars Jupiter square, it is competitive. If you want to compete against your personal best rather than other people, it's muscular. It can give us the oomph to do what we need to do. But it can expand temper military maneuvers and this, that our warrior nature. If we are a warrior for a good cause or for the safety of our planet, that can be a beautiful thing. Just be very careful how that plays out in your life. And I was looking at that in relationship to the American chart. And because here's the chart of what I call Mythic America, July 4th, 1776, 5:15 p.m. in Philadelphia. There are many charts for America. This one I have seen hold with transit after transit. I've been following it carefully for decades. So I think they all have a purpose, the various charts, but this one really works for me. In the process with that, we see Mars is sitting right on Chiron. America has just been going through a Chiron return. The asteroid Chiron that sits between Saturn and Uranus. And it talks about, it's often referred to as the wounded healer, but it talks about where we've learned the hard way, where we learned in healing ourselves from some wounding, some attack or some mistake or some challenge. What we learned from that is part of our training to be helpful in the world. And America has that. We were born in that, in the Revolutionary War, and the nature to go to war first, to simplify things into ease, right and left and simple is part of that Mars in that Chiron in Aries. And how do we take that and work with it? So I see that pattern. I see and needing that we need to work with that and heal that in a good way. And that it's going to be close to our Chiron, bringing up our wounds of how militant or how quickly America dissolves into a fight. And Jupiter will be on our Mercury, reminding us that if we can just keep the lines of communication open and not rhetorically, but really as a country, listen to one another, get the various groups to listen to each other, to try to understand, not to liberate the communication, not to just make their point. That's going to be a real question. This summer, I mentioned before that all the outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter will all be at around between 4 and 5 degrees in mid-July. They will be squaring the midpoint between our Venus-Jupiter conjunction in the 7th house. And that's a beautiful conjunction in our house of partnership as a country. And I think of that as how we have built really good alliances and really strong allies. But that's going to be heavily tested this summer in particular, as it has been all this year, but it's really going to be tested this summer as those planets square this. And, can we move out of our assumptions and into something better? The next major aspect I want to talk about, so we have that Mercury squares Pluto the day after the Mars squares Jupiter. And that Mercury squares Pluto, that'll be on next Tuesday, the 5th, asks us to go deeper, to think seriously, to kind of consider what matters to us. And it's very good for doing personal understanding, for doing psychological work. Or for, really getting into the depths that we want to look under rocks and really understand the situation better than we normally do. And then on the 10th and 13th, over that weekend, both the Sun sextiles Jupiter and then Mercury sextiles Jupiter, asking and Mercury and the Sun conjunct on the 14th. And that's coming to kind of understand. Now, that's called combust, when the Mercury and the Sun, you see the giant sun, little tiny dot of Mercury, if you look at through the telescope, and it can feel like our ability to think becomes so connected with our how our personality and what's going on, that we don't have much objectivity. So kind of keep an eye on that, but those sextiles to Jupiter can bring a chance to free something up in ourselves and in our world. That'll be over that Mother's Day weekend. Something completes, something heals, the opportunity to take it to a good level. Now, Mars is going to conjunct Chiron in the sky on May 16th, and again, ask us to do some healing around how we express our temper and how we boldly go forward, but in a way that is also considerate of the people around us, that it's not an either or situation. On May 17th, Mercury heads into Gemini, and that's, I think that will help. Mercury will be moving out of Taurus, and where it's going to be fairly soon, and into Gemini, and then conjuncts Uranus. There's a real chance for new communications, new beginnings, new ideas, really helping people getting ready for the summer and making those major shifts that are part of the end of the year program. So watch that on May 17th as Mercury conjuncts Uranus, and then on soon after that when the Sun conjuncts Uranus on May 20th. So that'll be times of big change, and Mars gets out of Aries and goes into Taurus on May 18th. And I think that's going to, it switches from explosive heat to stubborn, stick our heels in. So hopefully we can do as much communicating, those international negotiations now, so that they don't get stuck at that point when Mars goes into Taurus. But for all of us, that can take us into our gardening and into the earthy ways of being, and put our energy, can help us give that more slow and steady pressure and less flash and bang. Now, also on that day, on Mars 18th, Venus goes into Cancer. So we're moving out of Aries and Gemini into Taurus and Cancer, and kind of coming back more into a more intimate relations with ourselves, with our work, with, kind of needing to tend our relationships, because we've been very busy during this time. This Aries time isn't so much about emotional intimacy. It's about trusting one another with the freedom that we need. And now it comes back to, but I need a hug. It comes back to that security needs. On May 19th, Mercury trines Pluto. Look for some new information, return of lost items, return of lost people, or the time to do some investigating on your own for what you want to take it next. Venus and Mars sextile, they're in good relationships also on the 19th, and can really, we have a lot need for emotional connection then, whether it's romantic or personal or just within our souls. So work with that then. Watch it, though, on May 22nd when Venus squares Neptune, and we can put assumptions about one another that we just need to stop and slow down and take care of. The Sun conjuncts Uranus on May 22nd, and we have what we'll see here is the kind of, which can be, that's that excitement and that kind of getting ready for change. And I always think of Uranus as key phrase, which is, and now for something completely different. And what can we do to assist that and work with that? The next aspect that worries me, and again, all these aspects have a difficult side, but also a positive aspect, is on May 22nd and a little bit later. It's, where is it? It is, it is May, around this time. Yeah, it is on exactly on May 26th, that we will see Mars square Pluto. So starting around May 22nd, we're going to see that buildup of people, of willfulness, and watch people kind of dig their heels in. And it's easy to get into, an argument over war. It's the kind of argument later on you go, who cares where we put the damn thing? The picnic table didn't need to be there, it needed to be there, but finding one small place where we want to stick our heels in and argue rather than make it useful. So just use your willpower very carefully during that time. Watch the tendency to just kind of want to push people for the sake of pushing them and to help us feel like we're alive. But it can be also some really positive and juicy willpower that we can put into a task of our own calling. So use that well, enjoy it. It's going to be a month. We're going to get back into that earthy quality and think of the first day of May. Imagine me bringing you a basket of flowers that will enliven your day. Happy May Day, and we'll take care. See you next month. Last Wednesday of the month. Bye.